Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ MV, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We got a special guest in the building.
My guy.
Humble the Poet.
Yes, sir.
Welcome back, sir.
Thank you so much for having me.
Humble, one of my favorite books is Unlearned by Humble the Poet, and he dropped another one called Things No One Else Can Teach Us. What are the things you believe nobody else can teach us, Humble?
I don't think anybody can really teach us what we need to learn from our pain. Just all the challenging things that we go through. So I think, just different tools to figure it out. Unlearn was like me sharing gems that I picked up along the way. Things no one else can teach us. It's just me trying to share how I did it. Just, the different tools that we can have to stop judging our life and find value in some of the most horrible moments of our life.
That feels like when you start going to therapy, it's always easy to be transparent, right? Like you can tell somebody what's going on with you, but you can't tell somebody how it makes you feel.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing too. I think a lot of people think with therapy is like you're going there to fix your problems. It's there to help you kind of organize your ideas.
Absolutely.
There's a big idea I heard was, people don't have ideas. Ideas have people. Ideas kind of get planted into our heads. And sometimes we think that we're a certain way, but we've never passed one sentence off that idea. You say something like, I want to be rich. And you've never expanded on that. Why you want to be rich? Well, I want some security. I want to be noticed. I want to have nice things. And the deeper you get into it, you start talking about your feelings towards it. And then eventually, after you start talking about your feelings, you can start talking about your thoughts towards those feelings. And then you can actually see if you own these ideas. And I think that's kind of the important idea behind, taking things a little bit deeper and spending less time judging our situations and more time trying to understand it.
And there's some things that you learn too as you become more successful, right? You never thought you had to deal with. Like you talk about spending time with people that you genuinely just appreciate their company.
Yeah.
And that's something that a lot of people have to learn how to do because, like you said, a lot of times we're thinking about what can this person do for me? And should I meet with this person or is this a, quote, waste of my time?
Yeah.
And that's a hard lesson to learn too as we are trying to get ahead and, climb that, quote, ladder to make sure that we actually stop thinking that we, A, have to only spend time with people that can do something for us, and B, think that everybody wants something from us too, and that's why they want to spend time with us.
Yeah, that's a big one. In the book, talk about that. I learned that the hard way. I lost a friend who I didn't make time for, and I think at that point I had to ask myself a question like, why are you so ambitious? Like, why do you want things to begin with anyways if you're not trying to share this with people that matter? I don't think there's anything more important in this life than our relationships with each other, than what we can do with each other. And that was a wake-up call for me, especially knowing where my mind was at that time. And now, I can't go the other way and reject success and reject money and reject resources because, that's going to help with this movement for what we're all working towards is bettering each other's life. But I think it's important, especially me. I spend a lot of time in the West Coast, and it is very transactional, and you see it. You see it amongst
What
your
do you
own
do
friends.
for a living? That's what people ask.
What do you
first.
do? What are you up to? Or they start talking to you, and then they look you up on Instagram. They might see the blue check mark, and they treat you different. They might start counting your followers and treating you different. And you got to be mindful of that. And you got to catch yourself doing that too.
That's everywhere though.
Yeah.
I can't just say that's the West Coast.
I feel you. I feel like the most of the time I've been spending out there, that's just what I've been encountering. I feel out here in New York though, I feel like people are a little bit more, I guess they speak in straight lines. So I think
bullshit.
No?
Well, a lot of
These
people
niggas be
move to
lying.
LA because they're screenwriters or they want to be actors
Yeah.
too. And there's a lot of that because people tell you have to move to Hollywood for that.
Yeah.
So you do get a lot of that.
Yeah, I mean, I just signed with an agent. I'm moving out there too.
There you go.
Tell that story though, because I thought that was such a sad story. The person you kept brushing off.
Yeah, the homeboy, his name, his nickname is Boomerang, and we used to make music in the beginning. And then when I got full time and serious into music, most of the people I was making music with, they were all doing it part time as a hobby. And what ended up happening was, as I started, when I really needed to start making money and paying my bills, I really started taking a little audit of my life. And at the beginning, I was like, yo, I got to get away from all these, these friends that ain't doing nothing, that have no ambition, that are lazy, that are just waiting to get discovered. And then the next level was, I was like, oh man, I don't even have time for my friends that are good energy, good vibes, if they don't have the same ambitions as me. I couldn't really relate to people who had 9-to-5 jobs no more. I really couldn't connect with people who didn't understand what I was doing, because I left my 9-to-5 to work 24/7. And Boomerang was one of these people, and he kept calling me, hitting me up, being like, yo, let's hang out. And he wasn't
Always
even too
supporting
far.
you too.
Always supporting me, showing up to the shows, without a direct, even if I didn't like call him and invite him out to a show, and I'm doing small shows with like 40, 50 people, and he's still showing up to everything. And then finally, I made time to go see him, and the entire time we hung out, he just wanted to hear stories. He had some gifts for me. He just wanted to, see his homie do well.
He appreciated you for you.
He really, really did appreciate me. And then what happened was in 2017, I had a really big music video come out, and it did really well. It's probably my first music video that ever passed 1 million views. And he hit me up being like, congratulations, so dope. Yo, let me know when you're back in town. Let's connect. And I'm like, yeah, I'll hit you up. I'll be back in a couple of days. And then I did come back in a couple of days, but I didn't hit him up. And then a month later, he fell into a coma. And then a few weeks later, he passed away.
Damn.
And I have no one else to blame but myself for like not fostering that relationship. He was nothing but wonderful to me.
And the lesson you learned from that was what you was talking about earlier.
Yeah, nothing's more important than your relationships. Don't you can get all the money in the world, but then what are you gonna do with it? You can have all the fame in the world. What are you gonna do with it? It gets super lonely in this game. And I realized that, now my motivation is to, use whatever success and resources I have to foster my relationships and make things better for the people around me, not just myself. And also the fact that everything is temporary. Mm-hmm. You don't know the last time you see somebody is going to be the last time you see somebody. And, appreciate them. And I'm not telling people to be super doomsday and think that every single moment might be their last, but, it is liberating to think that things can come to an end, so enjoy it while you have it.
Let me ask you a question. What would you change in that situation? And the reason I ask is your video just came out, so I'm sure you were promoting your video.
Yeah.
You were doing work. Would you change not doing work to see him? Because in that same point, maybe you not doing the work would not put you on the platform that you are at now.
Yeah, I think, my mom always said it to me when I was younger, and she was talking about other things, but she's always like, don't find time, make time. Mm-hmm. And I think what it would have been was, I was waking up every single morning being like, I'm only going to make decisions that are helping me on my grind and helping me for my work. And I think what I should have realized is, as a writer, your number one thing to do is live life. Mm-hmm. You have to have a life to write about. And I think what I really would have done is I would have made much more time, had the conversations. Me and him had a lot in common. We, last time I came here, I told you about, people that did me dirty. We were mutual friends with that person, and we were helping each other get over that betrayal. Mm-hmm. And just spending the time to be around people for the sake of being around people. And I've done that now. I actually have calendar reminders in my phone just to hit people up and say what up. Even if it's just a quick text message, just to check up on people and see where they're at.
That's all it takes sometimes. You know what I'm saying? Just reach out to somebody. I love the Pot of Gold chapter. Pot of Gold really makes the journey worth it. Because I truly don't do anything for money.
Yeah. I think even outside of money, it's just the idea that we're always working towards something. Working towards trying to win a Grammy, working towards trying to get your first $1 million, working towards trying to get on like the New York Times bestseller list. And you make all these promises to yourself what's going to happen when you hit that. And it might feel good for like 5 hours, and then you're like, what's next? Mm-hmm. And I think people got to realize, like, don't focus on the pot of gold. Enjoy the rainbow. The rainbow really is the real jewel in this. And if you enjoy the journey, then the destination doesn't matter. And not just with your ambitions and your work, but like even for your own personal goals. If you want to improve your fitness, don't set a goal of I got to lose 20 pounds. Create a direction. Create a rainbow that says, I want to be healthier every day. I want to be heading in the right direction. So when you lose that 20 pounds, you keep going. Because a lot of us promise ourselves we're going to feel a certain way when we hit these goals. And man, we can visualize a lot and we can manifest what we visualize, but we rarely can, get the emotions correct for how it's going to feel when we get there.
And also, if you don't make lifestyle changes, you might hit that 20 pounds mark and then just stop.
Exactly.
What you were doing to reach that goal instead of having transformed really how you eat and how you diet and how you exercise. You might say, okay, I reached my goal. And that's why so many people, when they do lose that weight, end up gaining it back.
They gain it back and some. And it has to go back with habits. We have to focus on what we do every day is what we do in our life. And we just got to be mindful of that. And I just think, especially with the way life is viewed out here, is everything's extremely linear. It's really like, here are the steps and you get to the end. And then, when you watch TV, everybody lives happily ever after. But in real life, there's the next day. There's the next day to winning the lottery. There's the next day to losing your loved one. Like life continues to move on. So instead, focus on your direction and not on the destination.
You made a statement, we gain more from letting go. Yeah. Can you emphasize on that?
Realizing that, most of the time, our biggest, obstacles and our biggest opposition is ourselves. We have a lot of old expectations. We have a lot of old beliefs that weigh us down, and especially if they no longer apply to the life that we're living. And sometimes we got to let that go. We have to give ourselves permission to let it go and tell ourselves, look, this mattered to me maybe 5 years ago. It doesn't matter to me no more. I have to evolve as a person. And, we'll unlearn. That's what that was. That was the sandpaper to kind of take off all that old stuff so we can make room for new things.
Hey, when you say let it go, expand on that a little bit, because if I have a problem with you, it's easy to let it go.
Yeah.
But I still don't fuck with you.
Yeah, I don't see nothing wrong with that. Yeah,
I'm not harping on what it is. I just don't mess with you.
I think even that. I think sometimes if you did me dirty and I'm holding resentment towards you, and every time somebody brings up your name, I start to slander you, what have you. I'm just adding toxicness to myself.
But
even if I just say a fuck that nigga.
I think so. I think, your thoughts are your life, man. Those are the paintbrush for your life.
That's why I be like God. I be like God bless him. I be like God bless him.
No, I don't say God bless him. I'm gonna tell you the truth, and the reason I do is because situation. Let's say Charlamagne got you for $30,000.
Yeah.
I want to make sure he doesn't get anybody else for $30,000.
Yeah.
Because it might have affected your life in a way where you couldn't come back from it.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily want you to get have that same pain. So I'm gonna tell him. I'm gonna tell her. I'm gonna tell another person.
Did you just get a text about somebody still scamming people in seminars or something? That just came out of nowhere.
No, I'm just saying.
No, I feel you on that.
I don't hold that back. Like if just like if somebody does somebody dirty and I know about it, I'd rather tell people, because I would hate for that to happen to somebody else and me see it and me feel like I seen it on my watch.
But it is also how you view it.
I don't think that's you being toxic.
Yeah, because look, when I was younger, right, I got scammed out of $8,000.
Yeah.
And that was when that was like all the money I had in the world.
Yeah.
I was trying to buy a car and this guy was like a fake whatever that my brother introduced me to. And I don't hold resentment about that. I actually look at it like, well, it's really his loss now because I'm doing so much better in life. Like back then, $8,000 was like, damn, I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
But then you get to a point where you're like, well, look at how well I'm doing, and he's not doing well at all.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like I definitely have let that go because it was a life lesson for me that I'm like, well, I learned a lot.
Yeah, that's $8,000 in tuition. Tuition in life.
Right,
and I think that's to look at it. Yeah, I have a chapter in the book about getting scammed for $1,000 when I was like 17, getting a little fender bender. And back to what you said, I think definitely warning people what's going on. I think always when you take a deeper look into these situations, most of the time, I think with me specifically, the people that ended up doing me wrong, most of the time it wasn't conniving people who were like, career scammers. It was just people who didn't have tools how to communicate. So when things hit the fan and they could have had an adult conversation with me, they ran.
Right.
And in the beginning, I did try to tell everybody and everybody, you start to realize how little they cared.
Right, they start calling you a hater because they're not in that situation.
Yeah, or they're like, all right, cool, say whatever, and at that point, it was like, all right, cool, I got to be mindful of what I'm putting out there. And you definitely want to help prepare other people. Be like, look, they're going to be on their journey, and you got to help them that way. And at the end of the day, there are people even now, there's a homie that, he got real drunk one day and started writing the most foul stuff to me in an email. And then I ran into him 2 years later, and he gave me a big hug. And he showed up to my birthday party. He wasn't even invited. Gave me a big hug, and the next day messaged me with a huge apology for it. And I just said, look, man, I hope things are better for you. No hard feelings, but stay over there.
Right. Some people you just can't trust to let them
Yeah.
back into your space either because you
Yeah.
learn from that.
Yeah.
You're like, I can't trust this person to be in my space, so they can't be, but I've moved on from it.
And especially going back to Boomerang, I didn't have enough time for people that I wanted to be in my space, let alone people, even with one strike. And it ain't no hate to them. They're going to figure out their own stuff, but we got to protect our peace.
What do you mean in chapter 14? You say try to relate to the bad guys in your story.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the story as well, is just realizing that, I didn't realize how fortunate I was to grow up in a good family where, I always just looked at the petty things or the simple things my parents didn't have the tools to deal with. But one of the things in my house was always like, people come over, you treat them well, you treat your guests well, always make sure we have an open bed for people, it's open door policy. And I thought everybody was like that, and I thought everybody we treated well was going to treat us well in return. And people did take advantage of that. And then you start looking at these people's family dynamics and you're like, oh, okay, this has been a generational thing. These people have never been given the tools. Oftentimes, that's what it really boils down to. It's just not having the tools. And, the goal is to pass down what we weren't taught. It's not simply, as Uncle Phil says, we couldn't give our kids what we didn't have. Sometimes we forget to give them what we did. But it's also like, if my parents couldn't teach me, whether it's, focusing on long-term investing, finding ways to communicate without using violence, finding ways to write down my ideas, the use of therapy or what have you, that's the stuff we got to pass down. And I feel like when you start doing that, you start to realize a lot of these bad guys are victims of a cycle themselves. And again, it doesn't mean you got to give them a big hug and say, I forgive you. You just got to be like, all right, I don't have hate for you. It's unfortunate that you're in that situation and you make decisions that aren't sustainable, like the dude that tried to scam you. That doesn't last.
Right.
In the long run, it never lasts. And just be like, all right, just stay over there. I understand why you're like that, and I'm going to try to break that pattern in my own family.
You also said we don't own a crystal ball, so stop assuming the future.
Yes. That was a big one for me, man. I had real big issues with timing, thinking that I knew what the future was going to be like. So
a lot of these kids need to hear this.
Yeah, so if you're like, all right, something I wanted didn't happen. Everybody in their life has a story where things turned out, they didn't get the outcome they wanted, but then in the long run, after a couple of months, it was better than you thought. And everybody else also has a story in your life where things happen exactly like you wanted it,
so you thought.
And it was horrible. And you're just like, you got to recognize that we don't have a crystal ball. We can't see into the future. We don't know how this plays out. I can walk outside, win the Powerball, win a bunch of money, and that could be the end of my family. That could be the end of my happiness. And I can go outside and get banned from the Breakfast Club, and that could be the best thing that ever happened to me because it lights a fire under my butt to work harder.
Why would we ban you from the Breakfast Club?
I'm just talking about a worst case scenario. I love coming up here, man. You guys are so dope. So, just in general, just realizing that there is no good, there is no bad. It's what we make of it, and let's not rush to judgment. The overall idea for here is spend more time understanding and less time judging.
I've always said that. I've always said I don't believe in good or bad. I just believe things are, and it's just all part of one long process.
It is, and sometimes you got to zoom in. I got a whole section in this book called Zoom In. Look at the details of the stuff, and you realize, okay, this isn't just simply good or bad. There's some good things to it. There's some less than inspiring things to it. And sometimes you got to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. I think even now, like from a hip hop standpoint, like if you went and saw, an old Jay-Z video and you judged it for what it was, and then you zoomed out, you're like, well, this is what helped create J. Cole, or you look at a Dr. Dre video, like this is what helped create space for Kendrick Lamar. Then you see the culture from a bigger perspective, and you're like, all right, cool. Let's stop judging things in isolation in their own silos. There's some important stuff happening here.
You also, I love your quotes, man. Say everyone has their bad days. Not everyone wants to hear or believe in that moment everything will work out. When you come across those moments in your life or people you meet, how do you refocus your approach on how to help your own energy?
I think we got to have mantras, we got to have daily reminders. The same way you got to brush your teeth every single day. You got to remind yourself. You got to remind yourself what your truth is. You got to remind yourself that, slow down, take a deep breath before you react. My big thing is, we should reserve complaining. I'm big on that. It's
overachieve, under complain.
Overachieve, under complain. Yeah, go 24 hours without complaining, and the quality of your life will instantly get better.
That's what I when we did the Women's March with my friends, I told them, I said, see if y'all can go this 24 hours without saying anything negative about somebody else, right?
Yeah.
You look on social media and you're like, oh, why is she wearing that? She don't, all these negative thoughts in your mind just to see how good it feels to not have negative thoughts about other people. And I think it is important for us to check ourselves sometimes because like you said, it's more of a reflection on yourself when you have these thoughts about somebody else than it is a reflection of that person that you're talking about.
Yeah, when people take shots at us, they're telling us their stories. They're not telling us our stories. They don't even know us. And, in addition to, not having a lot of negative thoughts towards other people, it's also being mindful of what motivates those thoughts. Mm-hmm. Social media is going to continually motivate you to compare yourself to other people. And you're not scrolling through social media, seeing people less fortunate than you and being like, oh, I'm so blessed and grateful that I'm not in this situation. 'Cause that's not what social media is for. Mm-hmm. Everyone's showing their highlight reel. Mm-hmm. And you start comparing their highlight reel to your behind the scenes. And then all of a sudden, you start to have thoughts where you're like, all right, let me diminish their accomplishments so I don't feel less important or less significant. And if we're mindful of that, for me, like I don't have social media on my phone. I have a whole separate phone with Instagram and everything on it. So that cuts like 70% of how often I'm on Instagram. And then even when I'm back on, I can see certain thoughts happening. And it's difficult for everybody. And we just got to be mindful of the environments that we put ourselves in, the people we put ourselves around, because just like the food we eat, that all impacts us.
What about social media, right? Like it's a common human mistake sometimes to overvalue ourselves, and sometimes we undervalue ourselves. But on social media, and people coming at you, shouldn't sometimes you think they're not supposed to like me? I'm winning.
Yeah, I mean, I learned that from Lily. Lily told me, she's like, when you drop a video, if you don't have any thumbs down, then you're not reaching a new audience.
Word.
You know, the only way you know you're reaching beyond your core audience or your core community is if you start getting a little pushback. So I think from that perspective, it's great. I think engaging with those people when they come at you, I think that's probably a waste of energy.
I'm not doing it.
Yeah,
You're not going to change somebody's mind that already is dead set on feeling a way about you.
Yeah, and they're going to make up their own
They
stories.
might just not like you.
Right, and so why bother changing their
situation.
mind? Like, they feel a way, they're going to feel that way no matter what.
Exactly.
1000%.
And you can have your opinion, but I think people know the difference between when somebody doesn't like you and when they're trolling and just really trying to get a rise out of you.
And we got to be mindful of our biases. I think we all have those. Where there's certain people on this planet, they can't do no right in our eyes. And then there's certain people on this planet, they can't do no wrong in our eyes. And I think both biases, you know, can have some damaging effects. So we got to be mindful of that.
Bias is a subjective thing too, though, because your biases come from you maybe really knowing a person. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know how to be that person on social media that everybody dislikes,
Yeah.
but you really know that person. Like you've interacted with them, you've hung with them, you kick it with them.
Yeah.
So your biases come from you actually knowing that person.
Yeah, I mean, context is, I remember, you know, people came up to me after the last Breakfast Club interview. They're like, oh my God, we're so surprised that Charlamagne never cut you off. And I was like, why would Charlamagne cut me off? He's such a nice dude. And it's because they only see you from the outside, and we got time to kick it and build, and they didn't know that you invited me on the show. So I think it's a really important thing that people kind of recognize that. And it's confirmation bias too, which is the idea, and the science behind this is when you have a bias towards something, your brain will actually ignore things that contradict that belief.
Yes.
You know, that's
You'll find
why,
that one thing to justify what you feel.
Exactly. That's why you're not supposed to argue with people who love Trump, because their confirmation bias is going to be, don't argue with people who hate him. You know, the confirmation bias is going to make them see what they want to see, and everything else just gets pushed to the wayside.
And it works vice versa too, as far as, you know, you could really, it could be a person that no one likes and you know them personally, and it could also be a person that everyone likes but you know them personally and you know their intentions and the type of person they are.
Yeah.
So it makes you biased toward, oh, he only did that because of this, or I know why this person's doing that. So it works both ways.
Yeah, I go through that too, just in, especially being in the entertainment game. Sometimes you meet people and you're with, you know, if I meet somebody and I'm with Charlamagne, I feel like sometimes they might be nicer to me because I'm with one of their homies. But if you met them on the street, they might treat you differently. And it's especially over there in India, because India, they really believe, you know, they got a really strong caste system. And, you know, I'm the son of a cab driver. So when I see how people treat cab drivers out there, it's real bad out there. And that breaks my heart. And they're super nice to you, but they're like, because they see you at their status. And for me, it's always to be mindful of that. It's like, look, as things get better for me, never to lose where I came from, and always treat every single person with the respect and dignity they deserve.
You know what's going to be so dope about you, Humble, when you get old? Like when you get old
the
and that
beard gets
beard
white?
gets gray, yeah, you really
Then
going to be
people are going to take me serious.
Yes. Like they sleep. I'm not going to say they sleeping on you, because people that know. But when you get old, that's when they're gonna really appreciate the stuff that you're putting out there, man.
Well, I'm grateful for this book side of the Humble the Poet story, because I mean I'm still pushing the music, but the thing with the book stuff is I can do this till I'm super old and gray. And
Word.
Just yesterday I was at Barnes and Noble in Brooklyn, and like they recognized me off of that, and I was just like, oh, Humble the Poet, you know, congratulations, your book's doing so well. And like they only had one copy of my book in the store left.
Wow.
And I was just like, this is super cool, getting recognized in Brooklyn. I'm not from this city. And I mean, it's been a dope journey, and I think, you know, the real important thing that I also learned is when we had that conversation after Brilliant Idiots, you know, Unlearn came out 5 years ago. It just kept getting republished. I dropped it independently, then it got picked up in Canada, then it got picked up by the majors. And what you said to me was, had you seen that book 5 years ago, it may not have connected with you. And I think that was a big lesson for me, where just like timing matters. Things happen when they happen. Everybody's at different stages of their life. And now, you know, I was, you know, just having a conversation with folks and just being like, if I could give myself advice going back, is realizing that, look, man, your biggest obstacle is yourself. It's your doubts. It's your fears. It ain't nobody on the outside telling you you can't do nothing. Is when you speak your truth and you speak it the best that you can, people are going to connect with that, because people learn their stories through hearing our stories. And, you know, for me, writing these books, you know, with Unlearn, I shared lessons I learned, and I shared them after I thought about them. For this one, I just wrote the story and then figured out what I had to learn from it. And the goal with that was, especially with these stories, was these are the kind of stories that everybody's gone through. Whether it was, you know, I got scammed for $1,000, you got the scam for $8,000. I was waiting in the business class lounge in Kenya with my parents. I took them on a trip there, and then standing in line for the flight, and a man in a business suit walked up to me and was like, excuse me, you're in my way. I paid more for my ticket than you. You got to get out the way. And me just being like, oh, snap. This guy's saying this to me. I'm on 3 hours of sleep, but my parents are here. And how many people haven't had that situation where they know keeping it real is going to go wrong? And meeting people who just go out of their way to drop jewels on me. And the whole goal with all of this was when we change our attitude, when we change our perspective, you know, we can find the beauty in everything. We can find the gems in everything. And, you know, a bucket can't catch rain if it's flipped upside down. And that's where most of us, you know, start. You know, our default is, you know, we're not open to all the beauty that's there. And the second we are, then just amazing things happen. And now my goal, and again, my duty is to take these stories and share them to help other people find their stories and move forward. The same way that we used to draw in caves and be like, yo, watch out for that tiger. You're going to bite your head off. You know, these people didn't do it to get a lot of followers and make a lot of money. They did it to progress people. And that's where we're at now. It's like
push culture forward.
Push culture forward, exactly. Like maybe 20 years ago, people understood you got to start eating healthy. Now we got, you know, people of color making mental health a priority. People of color making ownership a priority. Making, you know, open dialogue about relationships and sex a priority. And I think these things are super important. And realizing that, you know, when I zoom out, I'm a part of that. I'm a drop in that ocean. And I got to take this stuff seriously. And as long as I take it seriously and continue moving it forward, I don't got to worry about nothing else. Everything else will work out for me the way it needs to work out.
Well, give me your Twitters and Instagram.
Humble the Poet, ladies and gentlemen.
Humble the Poet. At Humble the Poet everywhere. You find me Instagram, Twitter, making stuff on YouTube still, and the books available everywhere. Amazon, Barnes and Noble. All right. We got like 4 different covers already. It's dropping worldwide. We're going international. It's been really dope.
It's out now? Things no one else can teach us?
It's out now. October 15th it dropped.
I like this green cover the best.
The inside's real cool with the blue too. I'm signing these with silver markers. It looks super cool. So I brought y'all a signed copy.
Grab Unlearn too though. Grab Unlearn and grab things no one else can teach us. My man Humble the Poet, y'all really gonna appreciate this man in the future.
That's right. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me as always.
All right, it's the Breakfast Club. It's Humble the Poet.